Welcome, it's Rob Weston with the Rob Weston Show. Today, I'm talking to this man. Find the right button. This is Jonathan Winstanley. Jonathan is passionate about men's mental health in general, but men's mental health in particular. He is a bit of a champion, and I want to know why. I want to know why mental health in men is so important to him, and why it gets him as revved up as it does. And I think this will be an interesting chat, and I'm hoping that out of all this, it helps some of you guys, because I think that is what we want to do. How are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon, Rob. Thank you. Yourself?
Getting there.
Good.
Knackered hip, but getting there slowly. So, why mental health?
I think it's something that sits with me, and let's get it out there straight away. I have had my own issues in the past where I've struggled with my own mental well-being, about myself and how I feel, and this is not going to be all about me, so I'm just putting that there at the moment. But due to men's mental health being so prevalent at the moment in the media and things, I think I want to make a change. I want to join that, do as much as I possibly can. I've got friends that have struggled with mental health in the past, and I think the more support we can get going, the better it's going to be.
Okay.
We can talk, basically.
Do you talk to your friends about this?
I have a group of friends that I talk to. I have certain friends that I don't talk to. That's not a case of I wouldn't talk to him per se. I think it's just sometimes it's quite natural with some of my friends, or most people's friends, I would imagine it's the same. You just don't tend to have that relationship where you're going to talk about things. Yeah. That's maybe due more to do with an age, an era. Yeah. Some of us have moved forward, some of us just haven't. That's fine. But I think, I know particularly what I can talk to and what I can't talk to, really.
What sort of response do you get?
The positive responses. Yeah.
We can have both.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that because you do, I mean, on your social media, what always touches me is that you put out there quite regularly, if you aren't feeling the best, whatever it is, no judgment, I'm here, give me a shout. Yeah. So you must get a response that is positive. Yeah. I've had that myself. I've also had the negatives, but let's start with the positives.
Positives. I'm quite surprised by the influx of responses I got, because everybody could. I think I was more concerned at first that people would think he's had a few glasses of wine, sticking it out there,
Rare for you.
Yeah, don't drink at all.
Teetotal.
He's just looking to, I don't know, he's either feeling lovely or whatever. But response-wise, positive. I have talked to a lot of people out of media. I've said, let's go for a coffee. I try not to say, let's go for a beer. I prefer to say, let's go for a coffee. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to save myself on that one or somebody else. But
it's expensive after a while in the pub, doesn't it?
Yeah. But also what I did find what works for me is walking. So there's been instances where I've gone, come over, let's see me, or I'll come and see you. Let's go out and walk, let's talk, just see what happens. It's not always a case of something gets spoken about straight away. It's a conversation that'll flow. And that conversation, it ain't going to happen in one sitting. It may happen in a few sittings. It just depends on the circumstances. Negative points, really. Not that bad. I think it's too much of a serious subject, to be honest. I think, I've not had any. I think the only negative thing that I would think could happen is that men see it as, we don't talk. But I think it's getting accepted more now, so it's not so bad.
Yeah. One of the negatives that I have had a few times, and it's always from the same person, is we didn't have all these issues when we were kids. No, we did. We just didn't discuss them, and that's the thing, isn't it?
And this is it, and this is the key factor. And I come from a background of that era where you just don't, and it becomes the norm. I grew up all my life thinking this is the right way to be to push them feelings down.
Yeah, because you aren't. I mean, we're men of a certain age.
Yes,
21.
Yeah, exactly.
And but you weren't. You weren't taught. I'm a school governor now, and I know what kids are taught. And what blew me away when I went into school for the first time and I had a tour of the school was that as kids walk into the classroom, they have a little laminated picture of themselves, and they put it on a different mood. I'm in a good mood, I'm in a great mood, I'm feeling very angry, I feel... And it really blew me away that even at primary school, that the kids that are being shown and being taught that actually this is okay.
Yeah.
And when I asked the teacher, well, what brought that about? And it helps the teacher see if, for example, mum and dad are split up and they're always at mum's at the weekend or they're at dad's at the weekend, and they come in after that weekend and they're always feeling angry. But it also got to the point where you'd get other kids saying, Sarah's not feeling well, she's not feeling great today, is everything all right? And it gets the kids talking amongst themselves, which absolutely blew me away. We didn't do that when we were kids.
Yep.
You were out on your bike and that lamppost to that lamppost and don't go any further, and that was it. Yep. You weren't taught. But I suppose that's a generational thing.
I think it is a generational thing. I think, you know what, I'm really pleased that you've touched on this point. And
I'm here all week.
And absolutely, yeah, I am, because I've been thinking about having a conversation today, you know, and you know, what do I want to try and get over there or talk about?
Come a bit closer to your mic, that's better.
And one of the points I was going to say is actually I remember how I felt about 8, 9 years old, and I felt the same way, which was mood, or I don't know, just feelings of being different or indifferent, you know, and not being happy sometimes. And I come from a really strong family, you know, meaning we're a bonded family. I've got 2 beautiful sisters, my mum and dad. You know, we had a great family. We had a dog. You got all the things you need. A great upbringing. Why am I unhappy? And I knew it, but I never talked about it, and I don't think I would have done at that age anyway. And it wasn't until I became later in life, because it became quite difficult when I got to my teens. And I thought, and it was very strong, very prevalent in my teens. I really did struggle with emotionally. So knowing that that's being taught in schools, because that's something I've just learned from you obviously today, that to me is significant.
I have to say, rule number 1, don't drink fizzy drinks while recording a podcast, because the mute button's a bit awkward to get to. It got me so emotional, and I said to the deputy head who was showing me around, I am absolutely blown away by that. I'm really, really, I just couldn't, the thought that...
I can see it's making you emotional.
It is,
talking
because
about
it's just, I mean, some of these kids are 4 or 5 years old, but they are taught that feeling something is okay, and expressing that feeling is okay. Now, because we weren't taught that, does that mean we were abused or had bad parents or came from broken homes and bad... No, we had brilliant families. We had brilliant childhoods. Most people did. Yeah. That doesn't mean it couldn't have been better, but it also doesn't mean it was absolute pants either.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, my dad was a very astute is the word, I think. You know, it could be quite stoic, and there was no crying. There was, you know, it would have I had 2 sisters, and I was the boy. I was going to be the man of the house when he's gone, and everything else. You were a tough guy. I played rugby. I went boxing. I did all them things. So I think he
I watched telly.
He just saw that's what he channeled what he thinks a man's going to be.
Yep.
And that to me is what the key difference was. It didn't mean that he didn't love me any less. Yep. It just meant that his idea of a man was, this is what you do. You fit into this category. And unfortunately, I think because he was doing that, it drove me the other way, because inside I just thought, I was quite a soft kid. And when I say a soft kid, by that, what I mean is I just loved everybody. I wanted to be happy. I was a nice kid. I didn't want to fight with anybody. Unfortunately, everybody wanted to fight with me, which was different. You know, we were bullies. One of them things. Yeah. But it's hard, because you want to go home and tell your dad that, and you can't. And I found that I struggled with that, and still do. I'll be honest, you know, and that's part of why I've struggled, because looking back, I just think to myself, do you know what? I would never be, you know, right now, if I've got a daughter, you know, a beautiful daughter, but if I had a son, I tell you what, I would treat him exactly the same way as I do my daughter. Absolutely. Full of love, cuddles, it's okay to be this way, that way. I'm not pushing him into them things. I get what he did. I don't think he did anything wrong. As you just said, there was no abuse in our family or anything like that. I think it was just misguided in a way. It was,
But it's also because that's how he was brought up.
yeah, absolutely,
And
I
how
agree.
his father was brought up.
Yeah.
And if you go back far enough, this is how it all is. And we don't necessarily... It's not that we don't learn, it's that we don't want to learn. I think sometimes, specifically with the older generations, I know when I think about my parents, they don't know how to learn.
Mm-hmm.
My mum and dad didn't do hugging.
Yeah.
My mum does what I call the hot dog, where she'll stand there and go on then. And it took years, but I thought, do you know what? I want a hug.
Yeah.
And it took years and years and years. And she used to say, do you know, I don't know why you do this. Guess what? She now does hugs.
Yeah.
She doesn't do the hot dog anymore.
Yeah.
She actually gives you a hug.
Yeah.
And I think it can be learned, but I think it takes people who want to teach other people. I always think it's a bit... I think parents always become like kids at some point in life where you end up teaching them instead of them teaching you.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to want to teach them and they've got to be willing to learn. And I think ultimately she did learn that actually you can do this and you can be, you know, and it's not weak. I think it's actually quite a strong thing to show that I'm really not happy today, or I really am.
I agree with that. I mean, I think
Put some lights on with the... Oh, there we go.
for a long time, I felt that way where I thought it would be weak to do that. And so your mum did a hot dog. So with my dad, we had, I don't even know what to call it. I think it just a brick wall. So I'd go for a hug. He put his hand between me and himself to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
And looking back, it's got, you know, it hurts because I wanted that cuddle. You know, I really did want that from him. You know, and
you do get that that's not about you.
Oh yeah, I do now.
Yeah.
You know,
I suppose at that age, it's you don't.
You don't.
You
You don't. You just
why
think,
don't my dad want to hug me?
what's going on here? You know, and I had some friends whose dads were really quite tactile. You know, and I saw that difference, and it were the feeling you got when you went in there. But then I'd see them come to our house, and my dad was tactile with them, which in years and years and years later, it took me to realise that he's actually trying to protect me in his way to make me a man, to make me tougher, or what he perceived to be a man, should I say.
Yeah, and I think that's also another big hurdle that men's mental health has to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
That you need to man up.
Yeah.
You need to grow up. You need to get a set of balls. You need whatever phrasing you want to use. I don't understand, and I still don't understand. I mean, I have a friend of our age, and I know other people with their sons who say, you need to stop crying and man up. And I just think, he's 9 years old, he's 6 years. I don't get how... I do understand the generational thing of our parents and with the generations going back. I struggle to understand, I think, how people of our generation still think as our parents would have, or parents do. I don't... But again, I think we're back to how you brought up and what you learn from your parents, I suppose.
We are. I agree. However, I like to think that I've changed myself. So I've made me. I'm not saying they didn't. They brought me up fantastic. You know, I did my apprenticeship. My dad got me a job where he was working in engineering. He did all them fantastic things. And my mum, you know, my mum really looked after me as well. But I've made me who I am today. I'm the person that's advocating to make mental health better because I want it to change.
Yep.
And that's the difference. You know, I could have stuck in the road that I was on. So at 15 years old, a very difficult teenager, going to school, fighting a lot. And my dad thought it was great. Not in a way of you going and having fights, but you're sticking up for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, to then be a bit older and to still be doing that, and him to turn his nose away from me because he thought it were aggressive, and it were... I thought I was doing him a great favour. You know, he never told me that has to stop at some point.
No.
Because I'm just doing what I've been taught to do. Yeah. So for me, I've gone through that change again, come back to square one, and I'm now I'm stood there and I'm saying, do you know what? Let's talk about it. You know, my arms are open. I have no issue whatsoever with showing my emotions, and it's been very hard for me to get to that point. But I've made that happen. So I believe that you can have that change yourself. You can make that different. I think it's up to everybody else to do it. It sounds cheesy, I know it does, but
it's true.
It is true.
It is true, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, because you have got it. I mean, we met, to give you a bit of history, folks, we met at a mutual friend's wedding. Didn't know each other, got on well. I think he added me. He'll say I added him, but he added me on Facebook. And then a love of music, I think, was definitely the first thing that sort of got us. But the one thing that has made us friends, and I think extremely close friends, Stalker, is how you are.
Mm-hmm.
I know full well I can count on one hand how many people I could press that panic button and they would be there. But I also know people that wouldn't. And it is quite surprising sometimes when you think about who you would... The people you've known the longest aren't necessarily people that are going to be there.
Yep.
But what I love about you is... I'm feeling very loud all of a sudden. What I love about you is... if it's these headphones. What I love about you is the fact that you don't accept who you are. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you see each day is an opportunity for you to get better as a person and to grow as a person and be more than you are as a person. And that I find quite inspiring. Never told you that.
Thank you.
No tissues. We're not sobbing. But it really is inspiring to me that somebody gets up and, because I don't, I mean, I struggle. And I struggle and I think some days I just think, what am I doing, you know? But to see somebody that is so switched on and there for other people and has that capacity for other people really is quite touching to me. I wish you weren't there for everybody so we could get you around here more. You know, that'd be quite nice. But, audience for the Pope, folks, seriously. Because he's always busy. But your capacity for bettering yourself and helping others better themselves, if that's what they want to do, is quite an amazing gift that you have. So, going back, you talk to friends, and if somebody wants to talk to you, you're there to be there for them. Are you surprised how open people are, or do you find that you're still pulling teeth slightly?
No, I think I'm quite surprised by how open people are. I think, I suppose it's dependent on subject. Obviously, some things are going to be difficult to talk about for some people, and I don't force that. I like to think that I make them comfortable when I'm talking to them. But the vast majority of people that I speak to, it does come quite, I think, because I've already made the mind up. So, for instance, if I've mentioned on social media and said, tonight I'm free, as you know, as I always say, I'm watching boxing, I'm having a glass of wine, my time is yours. The boxing doesn't matter. That's I love the sport, but my time is your time, use it. From that moment of somebody that's contacted me, to me, that tells me that they're already ready to talk, because otherwise you've got to work on that. So it's hard to say, really. It's not as though I've seen somebody in the street and I've worked on it for a few weeks. Yeah. It's more a case of that person's already come to me and told me that issue, or within a few hours I already know that issue. So the conversation flows quite quickly. 9 times out of 10, they'll probably tell me that they're ashamed or they're embarrassed, and that's all about the feelings of feeling upset. I feel embarrassed about I've been crying. That's okay. So what? That's fine. I do it all the time. So once you get that going, and what I have found, Rob, in truth, it could even be just one evening, and I never speak to that person again. But what they have done is they've said it, because I've always found that my mental capacity is that once I've said something, that's a challenge. I've got over that challenge. Yes, I'll come back to it. I mean, me and you have spoken numerous times, and I respect you 100% for the amount of...
Most people do.
The amount of support you've given me, and we talk about things, but that works vice versa, and I think that's what it's about. So I'm not surprised by how open it is, to be honest. I'm really not. And there may be one or two that I've had harder time to talk to, and there are some that have talked and walked away. Let's be honest, and you have to be ready to talk. You can't make somebody talk.
And I suppose if somebody's approaching you, they've already made that first step. They've made that first the hard bit by not admitting there's a problem, but admitting that they want to change something and they want to do something different or better in whatever way. Do you ever find yourself feeling uncomfortable when somebody talks to you?
That's a good question.
I know.
It is.
Don't keep me here because I'm pretty. Look.
Oh no, that's a guy. No, hey, it's putting a good point across to me there. I don't think I do, but I do think that the situation of honestly, seeing a man cry, I find difficult, and that's because I know how it feels, and I know it takes all that strength to be able to be emotional. So, I think certain scenarios where someone's telling me something is not necessarily doesn't make me feel anything. I don't feel I need to get out of this situation kind of thing. Yeah. It's more so how they're dealing with it, and it's their mannerisms. They're a bit fidgety or they might get a bit angry. Because I used to do the same. If I felt like I wasn't going to be emotional, I'd just get angry. So the uncomfortable situations for me are more. I'll never not feel uncomfortable seeing a man being emotional because I know how difficult it is for a man to be emotional. Is my take on.
Do you ever start talking or start listening to somebody and think, I am in way over my head here?
No, and there has been circumstances where I have been in a situation where I've thought, wow, this is quite intense. And at that point, I've not done it there and then, but I've worked towards, let's refer some counselling or speak to somebody. Because, this is another thing, obviously that men think it's wrong to go and have counselling sessions or anything. I'm going to tell you that.
God forbid you should talk about yourself. That would just be too much.
Exactly, exactly. And this is, and truth be told, I've had a couple of counselling sessions myself. Very uncomfortable. But also...
Feel better for it?
Oh, God, yeah. Amazing. Really.
They're annoying, though, aren't they? Because they don't say anything. They just sit there and as Sarah Lancashire in Happy Valley once said, you just sit there talking wank because they rely on you to fill this space of silence.
It's awkwardness. You do. It's awkwardness. And I know when there's something, so in point to your question, I know when there's something that's out of my, I can't advocate for everything. There's things that do need that support. My support is more on a case of, if you come forward, I can put you in the right direction. And I've done that quite a bit. I've said, I'll come with you. That's not a problem. And I've done that. I'll come with you. I can sit in corridor because I've been there myself. I'll be outside waiting for you when you come out. If I could go in and hold your hand, I would. But I ain't going to because this is about you. And you need to make that step yourself. So I know when I've got something that's a little bit bigger than I can take on. I'll make sure that goes somewhere else.
Do you know, I find that, again, quite inspirational that just because you're willing to listen doesn't mean that you have all the answers and you need the PhD in the psychology and all the rest of it. What you need is ears. And there's a phrase, and I can't think who gave the phrase, and I saw it again recently, and it's sometimes we don't listen to receive the information, we listen to reply, to respond. Now, I'm listening to you today, so I can respond, but I'm actually also listening because I want to take on board what you're saying. And I think that is the key thing if you are going to listen. Sometimes it's not about giving the answers. Sometimes it's not even about referring somebody. Sometimes it is just about somebody saying, I'm here and I'm listening.
It is, and you triggered a memory. I was in Benidorm must be about 7 or 8 years ago, and I've gone on one of my friend's stag do's, and we've gone in this bar on Seafront, a well-known bar, and we're all having a drink. And I don't know what it was.
Closer to your mic for me.
And
it's moving about.
I saw this guy who stood outside having a cigarette at the time I smoked, and he was drinking some wine, and I could tell he'd had quite a drink, but he wasn't staggering about or anything like that. He'd been on his own, and I just called over. I said, "I ain't got a light, have you?" And I already had one, but I knew there was something. There's just some. I just knew there was something.
Tell.
Yeah. Anyway, long story short, I must have been there for an hour. One of my friends had come out and he says, "We've been looking for where you are." I went, "And who's this? You don't even know him." I said, "We're all right. We're all right." I can't remember his name, to be honest, but it didn't really matter. I don't even know if we told each other's names. It was irrelevant to me. And by the end of that conversation, he was in tears because he'd spoken about things. He talked about how he felt. He was drinking excessively. He lived there. But I made that opportunity to stand there for that full hour, and I just listened to him. And I honestly think that's what it takes sometimes. Now, I'm not saying I've got psychic powers where I can see where some, but I do know when somebody needs that point.
Yeah.
And if I'm being honest, I want someone to do that to me. Or when I was like that, I wanted someone to do that for me.
I will say this. The other week, I'd asked if my husband was away, and I texted you and said, "Are you free?" Very randomly. And you were. And I remember you saying that you said to your good lady wife, Helen, that something doesn't seem right, I'm going over. And the odd thing was, I didn't know there was something that I needed to talk about. So to be able to pick up on that when even I don't know, I think is an amazing talent. It really is. But I don't think it matters, does it, if you know somebody? Sometimes I think it's actually easier if you don't know somebody.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is.
Yeah, and I think there's this... There seemed to, or used to be, this fallacy of if you don't know somebody, you don't talk to them. And I'll be truthfully told, I've been away with Ellen and I've gone, we don't really know them, and because Ellen's just lovely and gets on with everybody. And we make a joke of it sometimes. She's like, you like Victor Meldrew, you're just boring or whatever. But in all... Yeah. In all seriousness, though, I think to myself, I just know when somebody's not on point. I've done it on loads of stags. I've seen other stags when I've been away, and you get talking to somebody. I don't know if it's just a gift of I get on with people, because I do. I try to get on with everybody. I like this is the boy when I was young. This is who I was when I was younger. I am that boy again, because I want to be nice to people. I want to get on with people. And maybe it's because when I talk to somebody, they feel trust. And when you've got trust with somebody, you can tell them things. Maybe that's just what it is. With yourself, I think if you're friends, you know when a friend's needing something. I think personally.
I think you do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And I have several that sometimes you know it along, you can see what's coming. You can see what they're doing, who they're going out with, or who they're dating, or whatever the situation is. You can see it coming. But until they get there, there's absolutely nothing. And no matter how many times you say, this is... And I don't say that to people for I told you that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes it is about you're trying to protect somebody, you're trying to stop them from hurting. And it's not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy. And I find that quite challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I think the world would be so much better if everybody just did what I told them to do. But
I like your philosophy.
God hasn't given me that ability just yet. So it is about, it is just about trying to be there when the wheel does come off. Before we continue, I'm going to remind you all, our website address is www.hailtalkradio.com. And if you want to get in touch with any comments about today's show or anything else, you can give us a hail. Email us hail@hailtalkradio.com. We will be back with Jonathan in 1 minute. Thanks for listening. Remember, you can get in touch with us. You can email us hail@hailtalkradio.com. You can follow us on X at The Rob Weston Show, on Facebook at Rob Weston Show, and on Instagram at Rob Weston Show. Visit our website, www.hailtalkradio.com. Also remember to like and share this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel. Doesn't hurt and doesn't cost you anything. And it really does help us grow and reach more people. Okay, so going back to what we were just discussing, I had a similar experience recently in that I had a friend from school who I've not spoken to it's been a while, who messaged me randomly. I've had two in the space of 2 weeks, and it's really weird. One was randomly about a relationship with his girlfriend. The other was about the other guy was a relationship with his girlfriend. The first guy, somebody was talking, but he wasn't talking. He wasn't being honest. I don't know. Something didn't seem quite right there. But the second one rang alarm bells. And I remember we were out for an Indian. Gone to the local curry house and was chatting away. And my husband does what he always does when I'm playing with my phone, when we're meant to be talking to people, when we're out with people. You're being very rude. You need to stop doing that. Put your phone away. And I said, something not right here. And his response was exactly what you've just said. You don't know him. Mm-hmm. It's 25 years since you've spoken to him. It's not your responsibility. And granted, it's not my responsibility. Got talking to him. Discovered various different things were going wrong in his life, and he'd been in... is that a dog scratching at my door? Sorry, if you can hear that on the mic, it's we've got dogs. And you'll get to know them. Bella and Bentley wants to know why the door's shut and what we're doing in here. So this friend, as you said, something's not right. Spoke to him a few times and then got word the day after he'd taken an overdose. And the frustrating thing for me was, I think if that's what you're going to do, you're going to do that. The frustrating thing for me was I didn't know where he was. Yeah. Wasn't living in Doncaster, where I'm from, anymore. Was living up north somewhere outside of Glasgow, I think. I couldn't tell, even if I couldn't do anything. I could have rung the police, but what am I going to say? Friend from school's... Yeah. There's nothing you can do. But it goes back to what you were saying about, you don't know this person, why are you talking to them? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think if I was to say you've either got that or you haven't, I don't know if that's what I want to say. But for me, I think you've got to have you've got to be an empathetic person.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to see that, so to speak, And it's not, as I say, it's not always about the conversation you have with somebody where you've had a few beers and it comes up and somebody says, look, this is how I feel. There's also signs of people.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see, but it's also quite easy sometimes as well, if that makes sense.
Because I looked at that and thought, after 25 years, he's messaging me.
Mm. Why is he reaching out?
Why is he talking to me, of all people?
Yeah.
And his original, oddly, both of them had come to me and said, I remembered you were Catholic. Mm-hmm. One had got questions about his faith. I thought that. The other was, you were Catholic. And I remembered that. And I thought and that's the one thing I remembered about you. And I thought you'd be a good person to talk to. Which was quite touching, don't get me wrong. But I also sat and thought, after 25 years, you still feel able to come to me and say, I'm struggling with this. Mm-hmm. But that, to me, was a factor. The fact that after 25 years, somebody's come to you and messaged you and said, I'm struggling with this, that should be hang on a minute, let's stop, back up the truck a bit. Let's just take 10 minutes and see if this person's all right. Because after 25 years, to me, that is a randomness. It's not a everyday occurrence. Mm-hmm. But it was clear to me as a sign of somebody needing some help. He is now getting that help, thank God. But I don't see why the fact that you know somebody or you doesn't comes into it for some people. If you can help one person, if we can help one person with this podcast, then job done.
Absolutely, that's the whole point, yeah.
And I think that is a nice way to look at life and to feel about life and to think about life. What I want to know, though, is how do you do all this? You've got a full-time job. I was going to say a full-time wife. A full-time job, a wife, a new baby, who's adorable, I have to say. A full-time job. You've got all these things going on. How on earth do you find time for your own mental health and everybody else's? Because you do a lot.
And I've never really thought of it like that, to be honest.
And with Helen, she says you need a day off.
Yeah. Honestly, I think because it's also therapy for me. When I make somebody feel better, and it is honestly the truth, I feel so good about myself when I make them feel better. This is not, and that is not a narcissistic point of view.
No,
that is just I genuinely feel better about myself because I have ups and downs. You know, my struggles are, I've got a daughter now. I need to make sure that am I a good dad? Am I doing the right things? Am I doing what I need to be doing? You know, but then when I help somebody, it kind of levels it out a bit, and I feel better because it's the best of both worlds. I'm helping somebody, but I'm also helping myself at the same time. And because when you're having that conversation with somebody, you're not 9 times out of 10 you are listening, but you also need to give something back. So I'm having my therapy as well because I'm going over my old ground and I'm talking about how I felt. I might be going over some new ground. There might be some new things that are happening. You know, I have days where I struggle with myself, you know, and with confidence sometimes. I know I might come across as a confident person, but a lot of times I'm not. I'm struggling inside with that, you know, and it can be difficult. Some people might find that, or have found that, quite a shock. But nobody knows what somebody's hiding behind themselves, you know.
Everybody has a face.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Everybody has a face, whether you're feeling fine and dandy or not.
Absolutely. And I think it's a good point to touch on something that did happen quite a few years ago. Well, not quite a few years ago, but a few years ago. It's one of my friends that have been going through some real mental health problems. From time to time, he was known as a bit of a, and I want him to remain anonymous. You know,
yep.
I don't want to mention.
Oh, we're not here to name
exactly. No, exactly. And I had seen it, although people classed a lot of his actions as he's just daft. He's just doing this. He's just, you know. I didn't, and I knew he did. I didn't because he spoke to me about some things, how he felt, and he was very open with me about these things, and he was very emotional about these things. And when he was emotional, it made me very emotional as well, and I think that helped him a little bit. And I always put my time aside when we talked, and 9 times out of 10 when we were talking, it was drink, because he was drunk, I went out, and he wanted to talk at that time. I was never going to say no. It's as simple as that. And we had quite a few conversations over the years, and unfortunately, he decided that his time was then, and he took his own life, and it was absolutely horrific. It still is, I'll be honest. I want to talk about it because I think it's the right thing to talk about, because I've seen it firsthand, what it does. I was already advocating before this had happened to him, but it made me advocate much, much more. And I struggle with that. I struggle with that because I gave him every opportunity, but that doesn't mean to say that I failed him. It just shows, you know, I did everything I possibly could. I felt that I'd done all I could to help him, but he felt that that wasn't enough and that his time, you know. And that's the thing, you know, it's raw because it's happening now so often. And a lot of these people that it's happened to, I don't know them personally, but I know their friends and I know what it does to people. And it just seems it's become, and I could be talking off Andy, and and I don't want to sound like I am. Yeah. It just seems to me that it's become an acceptable thing, where because other people are doing it, you know, people are kind of letting the guard down, saying, "Do you know what? That's the way out." And I felt that feeling before many years ago, where
you think that suicide is the way, is the way out.
Yeah, and I even remember having this. I mean, this is after my friend had passed. It's before. My friend had taken his life. I remember when I was younger, I once had these awful feelings and I was really struggling at the time. And I thought to myself, do you know what? All I have to do is
just send your mic for me.
All I have to do is take me on life, and it stops. And at that point, I could move on that day, and I moved on knowing I felt better because I knew that's my get out. And that's an awful thing to think.
It is, and I think there's a couple of things on that.
Yeah, sorry, a lot of information there.
There's a couple of things that I would say on that. I think the first thing is that it is a permanent solution to a temporary situation. And I don't think we think about goosebumps. was just saying that. We don't think that. And speaking from experience, there is nothing at all that is going to stop somebody wanting to do that.
No way.
If that's where their mind is, that is what they're going to do.
Yeah.
No matter where they are, no matter who they are, you can be talking to them 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes later they've found time and they're on their own, and this is what they're going to do. And from my experience, there is a switch off in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
All the safety things in your brain that tell you don't put your hand in the fire, don't cut your hand, don't that knife sharp. All these cut-offs that stop you hurting yourself are no longer working.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens, in my experience, was that is the only thing that is going to stop this pain, this feeling, this thing that's eating you up.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for the dogs, because without the dogs I wouldn't be here. But it's really hard to understand why somebody would do that. I was here, and they were talking to me, and I said I was here, and they could have. But I think the biggest thing for you to remember is this isn't about you.
Mm-hmm.
It is about them, and it is about how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And it's not your fault. It's nobody's fault.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a fault. There's nobody at fault. It is simply because that is where that person is.
Yeah.
And I've had it. I spoke to the guy from school, and I felt everything was all right after talking to him. I thought it wasn't to start with, but we've got to a point. He's all right. 20 minutes later, phone call came. This is what he's done. It annoys me when people say, it's fake, it's just cry for help. But it's not. If you are genuinely wanting to take your own life, it is not a cry for help. It is not a way to get help. It doesn't work like that. But I think the biggest thing is that the other thing I've heard quite often is he had kids. He had kids. How could he do that?
Yeah.
What about you've got a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a wife. You've got a family. You've got friends.
Mm-hmm.
Some that like you, some that don't. But they're there.
Mm-hmm.
In your right mind, as you sit here now, feeling non-suicidal,
mm-hmm.
what would have to happen for you to not be here and leave your daughter and your wife?
It's incomprehensible.
It is.
Yeah.
So why then, when something I can't say that word, catastrophic happens in your head, to get to the point, why is it, it's a coward's way out? Why is it you didn't think of anybody else? So it's so selfish.
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't, because when you think about it, he's got to a point where the fact he's got kids, the fact he's married, all these factors aren't enough. These factors, it's not that they're not enough. These factors haven't even come into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing he is on, and as you've just said, something massive must happen
Mm-hmm.
for you to even think about that.
Yeah.
In a normal frame of mind. So what sort of frame of mind must you be in to do that? And I think suicide, I've just Googled this just before we started recording, and 3/4 of all suicides are men.
Wow.
And I think a massive part of that is that people don't talk.
I would agree with that.
And when people do talk, sometimes people don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I wanted to talk to you about this today, because I think it is one of the most important. We're in an election cycle here. We're in an election cycle in the US. We've got Israel and Gaza and all the rest of these things. Why is this so important? This is important because, to me, because there are people in this country, in this village, in this town, in this city, in this country, this planet, who have family. To me, it is the basics of basic. It is one person that's walking down the street. It is one person that's sat there thinking, this has to end, and I can't cope with this, and I don't know what to do. never... There's a phrase that comes to mind a lot recently, and it's not just God in heaven give me strength, but that is a favourite of mine, I will give you that. And it's that peace is not an absence of war. You can have no war, but if you're depressed or suffering or need to talk to somebody and can't, you're not at peace. I think we all need to find peace within ourselves, within our houses, within our hearts, within our homes, within our communities. And I don't think we can do that without talking to each other, without listening to each other.
It's hard for me to answer that because there were some content in there. I think are quite some great content said much better than I can. And you say that I champion or advocate, but I think you've just hit every single point that needs to be mentioned. Obviously, on the back of what I'm saying as well, because things are still raw for me in that respect. I couldn't agree with you more what you've just said. I really couldn't. I'd say it in different words, obviously, but I think that from the talking's perspective, I do think that sometimes, and I'm talking from my own experience as well, so when a man has a problem and he talks about that problem, there becomes a new problem, which is, oh my God, I have talked about that problem the next day. And I could be referencing drink. For some people, it may be drugs, some whatever get out they've got. You've said it. Oh my God, it's out there. Now what am I going to do? And I think I believe that moment is a crucial moment. I really do. Because you are at a point there where, and I'm talking from my own experiences, where do I go with this? Where do I go with this now? Because...
Is it more, where are they going to go with this?
It is. It really is, because...
Is that what you mean?
That's a really good point. It is.
You've said it. You feel embarrassed about what the problem is to start, where you're uncomfortable with it and you know you need some help. You then talk to somebody about it and they know about it, so now the secret's out there.
Absolutely.
So what if they repeat it? What if they say, well, do you know him down there? And he said... That ever happened? To you? Have you ever said something to somebody and it's been repeated, or somebody's told somebody else?
I think it has. I think... so, a bit of context. So, as you know, I lost my friend Stephen when I was... And I don't mind saying his name because everybody knows who Stephen is, so that's absolutely fine. When I was 23 years old. And it was a strange age to be at, if I'm honest. I was having some struggles anyway before this had happened. And when he passed away, I really had some big things that I needed to talk about. I'd never felt this. And the pain, I can't explain it, Rob. It's horrific.
He was your best mate.
He was. And he always will be, and it was horrific. And I really needed somebody at that time. I needed my dad. And my dad, if I'm honest, was struggling with it as well. So I didn't turn to my dad. I thought, in a way, it were a nice thing to see him that way, because I've not seen him in that much pain. It sounds really bad, but
No, but if you've never seen somebody showing
emotions, exactly. To me, it was something new. Yeah,
that you've always wanted him to show your emotion. Now he finally. So I understand what you mean.
So there were a time at that point where I had bottled a lot of things up, and not going into too much detail, but to give context, I'd gone for some counselling sessions because I actually had PTSD. They'd said I really was struggling. And before I'd gone, that were a few years later, but at that time when I was bottling all these things up, I actually told a friend about the things that I was feeling and what was going on, and it was intense, and it was a lot to take in. These were things that even I didn't understand. And unfortunately, that person did share that with a lot of other people, and I did feel that I were ostracised a little bit.
And betrayed?
Definitely betrayed. It felt horrific. And it felt like, that's why I'm saying about, I have empathy with that, because I then had nowhere to go with that. And I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. And also because I was feeling guilt at the time for no reason whatsoever. I think more so because I just, you you kind of wish you'd had more time, why didn't we do this or this or this? It's one of them things. I just felt as though I were on my own. I didn't have my dad to talk to, because I just felt he was on his own struggle with that. And we were still in that transition of, we're men. We don't get, we don't hug and stuff like that.
Yeah, God forbid.
So it was a really difficult time. So I think that it is so crucial that when that person first tells or speaks about how they feel, that to me is a real. I think that is the middle of the scale. I genuinely do. I think it's either this is going to go good or this is going to go bad, and it's getting over that, because you're going to have to do it again. You can't just do it once. In my opinion, you need to chase that. A bit of a cleansing. Speak about it more.
Yeah.
Come to terms with it, whatever that may be. Not what I went through, but it could be anything. And I think there's obviously the people that don't talk about it and kind of slip down the scale anyway. But the people that do talk about it are still in danger of slipping down the scale. And that's where I feel that I come in, because once I've spoken about it, first thing I do every single morning when I wake up the next morning is, how are we? Should we go for a coffee? Do you want to meet up? Make sure that they know I'm okay with this. Are you?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. So I think it's easy to talk about it like that, where I give my own perceptions of it, what I've been through, because it makes it a bit more truthful. That's how I see it. I do still believe there's a bit of a chemical imbalance somewhere with men struggling with how they feel about things. But I do think a lot of the problems are that the sharing it is major, and that's where we should be supporting that.
We should.
That's
and
the thing.
To be betrayed by somebody that you've chosen, you've taken to one side and said, I trust you enough to tell you something I've never said to anybody else, or I've said to very few people. To be then betrayed by that person, I have to say, is pretty low.
Yeah, sad.
It's and then of course then you've got to a point where you can actually speak to somebody. You've let your barrier down to speak to somebody, and then you've been betrayed, so now the wall goes back up. But I think even if you'd not been betrayed in that way, the fear that you will be betrayed is enough to stop you talking to start with.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to advise somebody how to get over that. But I do think it is about picking the right person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is it, and this is where I feel that that's the difference I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Is to be that person that you can talk to about it. And as I say, there are things that I get told, and of course it makes me emotional.
Yeah.
I have no shame in somebody stepping forward and telling me something and then me breaking down. They may not, I do, because I feel so emotional for them, because that's the empathy you've got. But it's that trust I put myself out there because I know that not everybody's got somebody.
Yeah.
And that is an absolute truth, especially men, because you just know that there's this very, very desolate place where you're not going to talk about anything, no one's allowed to say anything. But if you can see one person that you can, and in point to what you said earlier about your friend you haven't seen for 25 years, I've had a lot of friends that I've not seen for a hell of a long time have got in touch with me. And I picked it up like we've known each other yesterday, because that's the way it needs to go. You know.
You need that openness. You need to know that you aren't on your own. But you also you need to know that what they say to you is between you and them.
Yeah, definitely. And it's reassurance for them. It's you kind of buy into a contract, I suppose. It's the best way to put it. It's a binded contract where I'm gonna keep this. And also just make a point. There's a difference between somebody and saying all the things that you've told them. There's a difference between that and somebody saying to the other person, "Listen, no detail. Let's just keep an eye on so and so," because it's sometimes better for other people to know. Obviously, if you've got a smaller trust, you don't have to go into detail, but I've been keeping my eye on, because a lot of times a lot of people may turn around and say, "I have noticed."
Yeah, and it's quite odd when you sometimes you don't even have to say. You just look at a friend that's there at the same time when somebody says or does something, and you think, yeah, it's not just me. It's not just me that thinks that this person is struggling, that maybe they need a bit of help. But it is the unspoken. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have started a conversation with somebody who I thought needed help, and he ended up telling me, or started to tell me, about something he was going to do criminally. I soon put a stop to that. Yeah. I remember a girl once came to me when I worked for solicitors, and She started to tell me all these things. And I was the office manager at the time, and she started to talk to me about problems she was having at work. And it was quite difficult because we were good mates, but I'd also got a professional responsibility because I'd got a job. Mm-hmm. And the conversation went along the lines of her telling me all this stuff, and I just said, can I just stop you there? If you continue this conversation, I am going to have to do something about it. If you don't want me to do something about it, that's fine. Stop talking to me now, and this conversation didn't happen. So she understood what the parameters of that were, and it's not the same as somebody coming to me and saying, listen, I'm struggling with this and all the rest of it, but there are times where somebody's going to tell you something that you really either legally or ethically or morally don't want to know. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. Just be clear and say, let me just stop you. But I also think there is an unspoken rule. And I think the unspoken rule in a friendship is that you have to love the friend more than the friendship. Mm-hmm. In that, if you'd rung me in a state and I thought you were going to harm yourself, I would have no qualms, not one, in either ringing the missus or ringing the police or whatever to make sure you were all right. Now, would you speak to me after that? I can live with you not speaking. I'd be upset, but I can live with that because I've got to love you more than I love our relationship. Yeah. And I think that is also something that people need to bear in mind when they start talking to people. Mm-hmm. And start listening to people. This is Hell Talk Radio. Don't forget, you can get us on. Let's have a look here. You can get us on the website, helltalkradio.com, and you can send us an email, a message, hail@helltalkradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out. I will be back very shortly. Speak to you soon.